MTN Sports, this is Bobcat Insider, sponsored by First Interstate Bank.
Welcome into Bobcat Insider. I'm Ashley Washburn alongside Keaton Galogly of Montana State, coming off quite the Week 10 win. Definitely came down to the wire with that game-winning field goal by Blake Lester, and I don't want to say elevation played into why that game the way it did, but, you know, even up in the booth, I'm sure it was hard for you breathing out some of those plays, right?
Yeah, well, luckily I don't have to run around too much, although if you're watching on behind the mic, you can see how active I am. But, you know, it may have played a role a little bit for Tommy Mellott. He did kind of mention it a little bit in the post-game comments, where we did see him sail a few balls on some of those deep balls down the sideline, which has really been one of his strengths. He's had great touch on a lot of those passes and some of those fade routes. So I do wonder if that played a little bit of a role, and we'll see how that kind of continues to play out. But they finally clicked on one of those deep balls in Taco Dollar. Wasn't how they drew it up, but it certainly worked.
Wasn't how they drew it up, and I thought it was great hearing Brent Vigen in the presser on Monday this week is talking about how they do this scrambled drill, and they've been doing it all season, and it connected when they needed it too. So definitely a great unscripted play that we saw right there.
And it's what you expect when you have a running quarterback like that, and especially when you haven't had the same personnel week in, week out over the last couple of weeks. It's nice to see those kind of guys stay ready in that type of moment.
Well, and let's talk about personnel a little bit. We've had some injuries in that game, but we're kind of starting to get some people back. I think the biggest one, we saw Brody Grebe go down against Northern Arizona. It looked really bad in that moment, but it sounds like it wasn't as bad, thankfully. Was a hamstring injury, kind of a week-to-week ordeal, but not season-ending.
Yeah, and it's good to see when it's not a season-ending injury. That's kind of what we're looking for at this point in the year, right? Only 2 regular season games left, so if you have anything that's too serious, there's a good chance it's going to end your season. So, you know, Brody Grebe still on the cusp of coming back. Lane Sumner's going to be out this week, but it looks like he's very close to coming back. We're still wondering when Sean Chambers is going to get back. You know they're really missing Chambers, and you can see them kind of protecting Mellott a little bit, who had fewer than 5 rushes in that first half on Saturday.
But it was great to see Elijah Elliott and Garrett Kuhn get in the mix too, but other 2 people to note too. Danny Yu will not be playing this week. Isaiah Afonso is doubtful, but that doesn't mean he can't travel with the team, so we'll kind of see what shapes out come Friday when they travel to Cal Poly.
So we'll see how that works. We'll talk with head coach Brent Vigen about that and more coming up after this timeout on the Bobcat Insider.
Take coverage of the Cats with you. Download our app for your favorite mobile device today. Welcome back to Bobcat Insider, sponsored by First Interstate Bank.
We're back on the Bobcat Insider. I'm Keaton Galogly along with head coach Brent Vigen, and the Cats are coming off a thrilling 41-38 win against Northern Arizona. And Coach, I want to go back to that touchdown drive you guys put together in the fourth quarter to get to 38 points. So it was a 13-play, 75-yard drive. Started that around the 12-minute mark, had to convert a couple of fourth downs. Give me a little feel for just your philosophy in terms of the clock management and where that game was, knowing how much Northern Arizona had been rolling on the offensive end.
Well, I think we needed to score a touchdown. I think that was the bottom line. However we did it, it wasn't so much about preserving clock or anything like that, but the fact that it ended up being a methodical drive, the fact that we had a couple fourth downs, we had to go for it, and we converted them, was all part of it. You know, obviously we're a little bit more in a run mode at that point in time, and that was the running backs, that was Tommy, but ultimately our offensive line, you know, stood up when it needed to, and we were able to get 7 on the board.
Well, we also saw a really big run on that drive from Garrett Kuhn, the 22-yard run, right after you converted a fourth down. How much confidence did you have in Kuhn in this game? Because it really seemed like he was in there in some of the crunch moments.
Yeah, we had to, you know, go with Elijah and Garrett. Those are the 2 guys that were up and healthy for this game, and you know, I think Garrett, as the opportunities have presented himself, has continued to take advantage of them, and he certainly did on Saturday.
And Elijah Elliott, he averaged almost 6 yards per carry in this contest. What have you seen from him, and just how much fun is it watching him succeed, even though he hasn't had that really steady playing time throughout the year?
Well, he's been steady. You know, I guess he's been there at every turn. You know, he's the one guy that's been up and ready for every game. He's taken the opportunities when he's got them, and he's done quite well, honestly. And if we didn't have him, I don't know where we'd be. So, you know, appreciate his attitude early and hanging in there, and then obviously his ability to get out there and make yards as the season has gone along.
Okay, so after you get that score, you know, Northern Arizona comes down. They end up kicking a field goal. You're able to hold them to just those 3 points and keep that game tied. Once you guys took that ball over with 61 seconds left inside your own 20, what was your kind of goal there? I mean, just trying to get into field goal position. What was some of your philosophy in the play calling in that moment?
Well, with Blake, I think we felt like in a dome we could, we could go a pretty long distance as far as a field goal goes. So trying to get about to the 40 was the plan. We go incomplete on first and second down, but still, attempted to be aggressive. And we made the play we made. Tommy gets flushed out of the pocket, scrambling, is able to hit the big play to tackle. I don't know that was necessarily the plan, but sometimes it doesn't work out how you plan. Guys make plays, and that's what happened in that moment.
I thought it was so interesting, too, seeing all the players after that asked about that play, the 64-yard completion on third down, saying, that's just Taco being Taco. What's it like watching Taco Dollar grow and step into this role as a freshman?
Well, I think probably what they mean is, he's more mature than a true freshman might typically be as far as the moment. I don't think the moment's too big for him, and that's why he has been able to perform that punt returning role in particular. But this opportunity to make that play, I think exemplifies just who he is. He's a competitor. He's very confident in himself. And on that play, he reacted appropriately. Tommy gets flushed out. If he has an opportunity to go deep and get behind the defense, that's what he should do, and he did that. And Tommy made a great throw, and Taco made a great play on the other end.
Finally able to set up that walk-off field goal for Blake Glessner. And what's your philosophy on icing guys? Because Glessner after the game said he actually felt a little more calm after getting a couple of those timeouts.
Well, I think that's common practice. If you have timeouts and you can't use them on the other side for your own good, I guess you make the guy think about it a little bit more. And I think it has proven to work from time to time. But typically, a kicker's prepared for that moment. He goes through his routine. That's what I appreciate about Blake. He went through his routine. He didn't think too much about it, I don't think. And obviously when the opportunity was going to be there, he was ready to go.
Yeah, and now he's the Big Sky Special Teams Player of the Week after that walk-off field goal. All right, we're going to take a break, but when we get back, we're going to find out how an Army Ranger ended up on the sidelines and in the blue and gold of the Bobcats this year. The Devin Slaughter story is coming up after this timeout on the Bobcat Insider.
There's more coverage of the Bobcats online anytime at montanasports.com. Welcome back to Bobcat Insider, sponsored by First Interstate Bank.
Hey yo, run it up, 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 on a night and run it up, 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 I said I'm on a night and run it up.
You ready to go, Devin?
Yeah, sure.
You're like, yeah, let's do it. All right, well, Devin, at the beginning of this football season, you were a name not many people knew about just because you were a walk-on. But in the last couple of weeks, it's safe to say you've kind of become a household name just because people have started to learn about your story. From going as an Army Ranger to a college football player, how would you describe this season for you?
It's pretty similar to the military. It's very structured schedule and just the teamwork and the amount of time you spend with the guys.
I want you to take me back to where this story all began for you, growing up in Oregon. And you were quite the high school football player, from what I understand, getting recruited from some big D1 schools in that area. But there was something that happened in high school which kind of took away some of those offers. Can you take me back to there?
I always kind of was looking forward to playing in college, and that was my dream until my senior year. I had a pretty bad back injury. And so I ended up just going to Oregon State as a student.
When you stepped away, did you ever think that that was it, that you would be hanging up the cleats forever at that point?
Yeah, 100%. I missed it a lot. I think about it all the time. And now getting another opportunity to do it is pretty cool.
But let's talk about you being an Army Ranger. Not everyone can be an Army Ranger. I saw some videos of you jumping out of planes. Take me back to going through basic training camp and, did it ever feel like it was just a lot?
I was always interested in that whole Army Ranger lifestyle. I thought it sounded super cool. And going through basic training, I was like, wow, this is terrible. I don't know if I'm cut out for all that. But that's just how basic training is supposed to be. It's supposed to be terrible. It's supposed to be miserable. But you learn a lot and you really kind of figure out who you are.
But walk me through what really drew you to being an Army Ranger. I know you said you always wanted to join the military, but becoming an Army Ranger and eventually finding yourself in Afghanistan.
I had an uncle that was in the military, and I always asked him about it because I thought it was super cool. And he wasn't a ranger, but he'd always tell me, he's like, you can do whatever you want if you set your mind to it. I just kind of always thought, someday would be my time to go and serve my country. So,
What was your role at that time? I mean, were you actually in battle, or was it more behind the scenes stuff? What was your role in Afghanistan?
so I had a lot of different positions while I was in the platoon, but while I was in Afghanistan, I was a saw gunner, a machine gunner.
Tell me more about that. Was it, I mean, I'm sure you've seen things that you maybe never expected to see or stuff that we won't see. I mean, what was that like for you being over in Afghanistan doing that job?
It's hard to explain. You train so much before you go on deployment, and you get everything so drilled into you. By the time you get there, you're nervous, but then when you have that opportunity to go into the field and actually do your job, at times it can be pretty scary for sure.
Well, in some of those scary moments and finding yourself back home, was there ever a moment where you were maybe nervous that you wouldn't make it back home?
The times I was the most scared was doing any airborne operations, jumping out of the planes. That was the most frightening thing for me. And there's parachute malfunctions, there's aircraft malfunctions sometimes it's not even you, sometimes it'll be the guy ahead of you or behind you that screws up, and equipment gets tangled up in the aircraft before jumping out. So there's all kinds of things that can go wrong.
You served several years and then you ended up retiring and you found your way to Montana, specifically Bozeman. Never had been to Bozeman before. What drew you about Montana State and coming here? Because at that point, football was not even on the horizon.
Yeah, so I actually had a friend who was in my platoon, and he got out before me. His name's Coulter Lund. I don't know if you'll watch this, but he moved out here. And, he told me it was awesome. The veteran program here is ranked pretty high. So I just applied and I got in, so I figured I'd give it a shot.
Gave it a shot. You went to school here for about a year. You became a bouncer
Yep.
at Rock and R Bar, which it seems like all great stories somehow lead back to the R Bar.
Yep.
Which is kind of how you got your recruiting to Montana State. Can you take me back to the beginning of this year when you met Taylor Housewright?
I was working at our bar one night, and Coach Housewright just came up to me and was like, "Hey man, like, who are you?" And I was like, "I'm just a dude." And he was like, "Well, you played football before?" And I was like, "Oh yeah." And I think he went and looked up my highlight tape or something, and then he came back an hour later and was like, "Hey man, like, would you be interested in trying to play?" And I wasn't like quite sure if I wanted to do it. I kept thinking to myself, if I didn't give it a shot, I was going to regret it. So
One of my favorite moments, and I think this is a favorite moment for all Bobcat fans right now, is that pregame speech that you gave before the UC Davis game. And you said the best time to attack someone is nighttime and bad weather, and we have both.
Yeah.
I will say there were some explicitives in there as well.
Yeah.
But talk to me about that moment, because you just energized that entire locker room, and we saw what happened on the field after that.
In the military, they teach you the best time to attack your enemy is nighttime and bad weather. And we got both.
in my mind, I'm always thinking, when are the times that everyone else is going to be complacent? It's bad weather and it's nighttime, but that's when people don't want to be out here. That's when you really got to turn it on, because that's when you can take advantage of complacency.
And obviously Veterans Day is on the horizon, and these holidays, they all mean something different for us. For Veterans Day, I think of my dad, who spent 20, 30 years in the Navy. For you, you served, you got to see all those things. What does Veterans Day mean to you?
I think every day is a good day to honor veterans, and there's a lot of guys that did a lot more than I did and lost a lot more than I did. I think Veterans Day is just a good reminder, for everyone to just remember what's going on in the military.
There we go. Love it. Well, your story is so inspiring, so thank you for telling it, and happy Veterans Day.
Yeah, thank you.
Run it up, 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 run it up on a night and run it up, 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 I said I'm on a night and run it up.
Welcome back to Bobcat Insider, sponsored by First Interstate Bank.
We're back on the Bobcat Insider. I'm Keaton Galogly along with head coach Brent Vigen, and we're getting ready for the final regular season road game of the year, 6 o'clock kick against Cal Poly coming up on Saturday. All right, Coach, looking towards this game, Cal Poly's pretty strong through the air, and obviously that was a little bit of a trouble spot for you guys in the Northern Arizona game. What do you guys need to do to be successful in order to slow down their passing game?
Well, you're right. That's the strength of their offense. They got a good quarterback who can sling it around. They got some good targets. We got to be where we're supposed to be. Balls in the air. We got to make it. We got to get pressure on him as much as possible. The big thing, we got to keep it in front of us, though. I think there was all too many times on this past Saturday where we just the ball got behind us. We weren't in good leverage to be able to tackle the ball. Too many big plays in the passing game. We can give up some completions, but ultimately those big plays would kill you.
Well, and they were really spreading that ball around in that Northern Arizona game. How do they distribute the football with Cal Poly?
I think it'd be similar. A lot of quick screens, a lot of getting the ball out quick, but they got some guys that can go downfield if it's presented. So, we got to look at the things that didn't quite go right against Northern Arizona and shore that up. And some of it's assignments. Some of it's getting pressure at the right times, finishing off a sack, keeping contained on the quarterback. So it's not just on the back end; it's the guys up front being able to finish some plays off as well.
Well, we did see some of that pressure in that Northern Arizona game against a really good offensive line. They really don't give up many sacks. Who stood out to you on that defensive line in that last game against Northern Arizona?
Obviously, Brody had a big game. He had the first play of the game, sack strip fumble recovery, which was an awesome way to start the game. He had another one on a fourth down later on. I know Ben Seymour didn't get any sacks, but continues to play really solid football. Kenny Iden came in when Brody went out. David Alston played as well on the edge. And then we have Sebastian Blake giving pressure up the middle. So, that group, like I said, they're a big part of how we defend the pass. And the more they can disrupt, the better off we'll be.
And with no Danny Louis-Lekepa in this last game and not anticipating him for this game, how did that impact the play of your linebacking core and particularly Nolan Askelson?
Well, Nolan just went the whole game. Cal just went the whole game. I think they both played solid, which we anticipated. That's the beauty of having, three starters. One goes down, you still have two guys left. And thought Nolan played fast like he typically does. Made some key tackles down the stretch. In particular, Cal came up with a sack fumble himself. So that group continues to be a strength of our defense.
Now let's look to this Cal Poly defense so far. This season they are giving up about 39 points per game. Where have some opposing teams attacked Cal Poly's defense this season?
Well, I think it's probably been twofold. I think they've had trouble stopping the run at times. And they're not necessarily as big as they maybe want to be at this point in their development. And I think some teams that where their nature is to pass the ball, they have had success through the air too. So, I think for us, in a situation, we got to do what we do. And I think for us to continue to grow, we got to keep trying to strike a balance where we're not leaning so heavy on the run game. So we got to be able to complete some of those passes that we maybe missed on last week, and find production through the air as well as the run. All
right, we're getting ready to go for Montana State and Cal Poly coming up on Saturday. Going to wear a few fewer layers at Cal Poly this week than you were in practice.
A little nicer there.
Yeah. All right, we're getting ready for that kickoff, 6 o'clock on Saturday against Cal Poly, the final regular season road game of the season. We'll take a break, and when we get back, we'll be rejoined by Ashley Washburn as we set the scene for this next Saturday. For head coach Brent Vigen, I'm Keaton Galogli, and this is the Bobcat Insider.
Welcome back to Bobcat Insider, sponsored by First Interstate Bank.
We're back on the Bobcat Insider. I'm Keaton Galogli along with Ashley Washburn, and we're getting set for Montana State's final regular season road game going to Cal Poly on Saturday for a 6 o'clock kickoff. Now, Ashley, this is a Cal Poly team that certainly struggled in the Big Sky, but their strength is Montana State's weakness right now.
Absolutely. One of the biggest things we've been harping on all season is those explosive plays that Montana State's defense is giving up, and we were really hoping with the addition of Ryland Orr against Northern Arizona you would limit some of those, but that's really what got Northern Arizona back into the game. And Cal Poly's identity is pretty much the same. They're pass heavy, so they're going to need to contain Spencer Brash, and they're going to need to contain those wide receivers.
I think the other really interesting aspect of this game is how is this linebacking core going to absorb the loss of Danny Louis-Lekepa. Hopefully it's not long. It doesn't sound like he's going to be out for too long, but can Nolan Askelson, can Callahan O'Reilly keep that same effort, energy, and level of play when they're having to play more snaps at this point?
And then quickly, offensively, I'll be really interesting to see how they limit Tommy Malotte's workload. We saw that he was limited a little bit in that run game against Northern Arizona, but you're not going to want to have him running 30 carries against Cal Poly, especially when you're getting to that Cat Grizz in that first playoff game.
And thankfully you have Garrett Kuhn and a lot of confidence in Elijah Elliott down the stretch.
Absolutely. 2 games left of the regular season. You'll be able to watch that Cal Poly game late kickoff game, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. You can listen to Keaton Galogly on the Bobcat Sports Radio Network, or you can watch on the Montana Television Network. That's it for us this week. For Keaton Galogly, I'm Ashley Washburn. We'll see you next week.